We're going to do a toast here. We're going to welcome Raw and Uncut to the world with a toast here. Woo! Yes, yes, yes,
yes. Welcome to Raw and Uncut with Janet Marie. Today we celebrate Juneteenth. And you know what? I asked myself exactly what is Juneteenth. When I thought about it, just how I was going to introduce Juneteenth, I was actually just reading what I saw when I Googled Juneteenth, because I needed to understand Juneteenth for myself. And what I realized is that not everyone understand or know the history behind Juneteenth. I didn't myself. Honestly, I just learned of Juneteenth just a few years ago. And what I've come to realize is that I'm not alone. I'm not the only one that didn't know the history of Juneteenth. And at first I was ashamed and embarrassed to even admit that, acknowledge that to myself. But just hearing everyone else speak and hearing everything that's going on in the news, I realized that so many people didn't realize how important this day is for African Americans, for Black Americans, for our country, for Americans to understand what this day means for us. And when I think of it, and I have an understanding and learning Juneteenth, in June 1865 is when the remaining African Americans in Texas was freed from being enslaved. And I use that word free, I don't even want to say loosely, because that was hope of being free for Black Americans. That was our hope. That was our ancestors' hope. That is what we believed, that we would have a new beginning. I must say that things have made some progress over the years, but we have so much more progress to make. And just seeing what is happening today and what's going on, I think all of you are here for a change. We're all here because we all realize that there needs to be a change. And it's very hurtful. It is extremely hurtful. And when I think about my people, when I think about African Americans, and when we came to the United States, when my ancestors, when the African Americans came to the United States, that was back in 1619, year 1619. And then they say we were free, that we were free in 1865. But here we are, and it's 2020, year 2020. That is 401 years that we're not free. We're still not free today. And that is why we're all here, because it needs to change. And how I thought about what I would say, what questions I would ask. I didn't want to hurt anyone's feelings. I thought about the panel, all of my guests, joining Raw and Uncut, and how grateful I am that all of you care enough to be here. And I thought about, I don't want to ask the wrong question. I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. But there are questions that needs to be asked and needs to be answered. So I just asked ask you all to just open up yourself, honestly. Be truthful about who you are. Because what I have learned within myself, I have been self-assessing myself over the last few years. And the best treatment, the best thing that you can do for yourself is to go deep into yourself and find out who you truly are. And where did you really come from? Who are you? We are all here in this 2020 and this is where we are. But it started somewhere. Where did it start from? And we all really don't even really want to know the truth. Because the truth hurts. It shames you. It shames African Americans. We don't even want to know the truth. You have no idea what African Americans go through within their own families. The real truth hurts us so bad that we don't talk about it. We just go on our everyday as if it's just another day. But it's not just another day, it's on every moment that African Americans live this way. And we just become numb to what is actually real. And we're born into it. We've been born into it from generations to generations to generations. And I ask myself, with hurt in my heart, and hurt for my people, and hurt for the people in my country that truly cares about what African Americans are enduring and what we're going through as people, as human beings. And as I say, I just want all of you to open up yourselves. I just want everyone to be honest. And the only way to make a change is to be honest. And to go to that deep place of the unknown that we don't want to know. That hurts us so bad. But I promise you, with me self-assessing myself, I went so deep into my family that I brought myself to my knees. Because I had to understand me and why I am who I am. And it does not matter what race you are and where you come from. Until you do that, we will not heal as people. We will continue for George Floyd and the rest of it that has been happening for years, for 400 years. It will continue. So I want to thank my guests, all of you for being here. And I would like for all of you all to actually introduce yourselves, and so we will get started.
Hi.
Hi.
My name's Tara West, and I'm crying. I'm a local entrepreneur. I own an apparel company called Scarf and Blazer, and we focus on body positivity, women's empowerment, and just the hope that anyone and everyone can look at our page and say, hey, I can relate to these people. We are huge on diversity and inclusion, and just wanting to make everybody feel welcome. I am from a very small town in Ohio, and even moved to an even smaller town, Mars Hill, North Carolina, where I went to college, and then moved here afterwards. And I thought that I had made it to the big city, which, I love it here in Charlotte. And thank you to Rhonda for asking me to be here, because, I am so, thankful to be a part of this.
Hi everybody, I'm Frank Deaton. I traveled quite a distance to get here tonight. So it wasn't a lot of effort on my part, but thank you for the appreciation. But I do own a Holiday Motor Company. I met Rhonda probably about 3 years ago. And at this point, I consider her more family than even my own family. And props to you for bringing this together. But started out with a simple tail light repair, and here we are. So. But I was born here in Charlotte. My family had a dry cleaning business. It started back in '64. And this building used to be, a central hub for production. But, I got out of it some years ago, just repurposed the building and started doing some car work. I'm also a fully licensed broker. I do some commercial, co-broker commercial, but I do residential primarily. And I love the city here. It's changed a lot. Something good, something not so good. Traffic's not better. It's obviously very worse. Infrastructure is always 20 years behind, but it is a nice place. Charlotte has a way of making you feel like you've got some urban, feel to it, yet you can still walk down the street and run into somebody you know. That's kind of what's unique about Charlotte. Charlotte was always considered kind of a big town, never a city, and it still retains some of that. But I worry a little bit about our future and our growth to an extent that we might become too dense. And of course, but we'll have to see. Anyway, glad you're all here. Thank you for being here. If you need anything, let me know. We have water, soda. If the air conditioning is too much, too little, let me know. I can adjust it accordingly.
Hi everybody, my name is Shika, and when you ask me the question, who am I describe myself as an Asian American mom who wants to leave the world a little better for my kids than I found it. I was born and raised in India. I was 25 years old when I decided to come to this country, and I don't know what I was thinking, but I had a PhD and I was doing my master's in physics, doing PhD. Thought it was a walk in the park, or just changing countries. Little did I know that my world would turn upside down. My degree doesn't carry over. My friends do not carry over. I'm exposed to a different culture. Not everybody looks like me. Not everybody is so welcoming. So I had to live through being an immigrant, developing myself, and still finding who am I, where's my fitting. And with that, I had my two girls, and I'm very proud of my girls, but I'm now living life through them. And the way I say, why I want to leave the world a better place, I don't want anybody to ask my daughters that when we first moved to Charlotte, the first question was, so where do you go to church? You're asking a 5-year-old, where do you go to church? And she very politely replied, we don't go to church. And the other girl said, oh, so you are an atheist. And my daughter thought, atheist, I don't know what that is. She came crying home and she said, Mom, I didn't know I was an atheist. I'm like, oh, wow, your mom did a poor job explaining I follow a philosophy, but I don't go to church. But I believe in humanity, and I want to raise them as humans, and anything that I can do to make the world a little better place.
Who am I? When I think about that, the first thing I think of is I'm an Aggie. I'm a graduate of North Carolina A&T State University, Aggie Pride. My name is Brandon Holman. I'm a co-owner of 2 real estate groups, APAC Investment, Coleman Associations, LLC. I'm also a podcaster. I'm co-hosting a podcast called Your Network is Your Network. Looking forward to being here today. I would like to thank Rhonda for allowing me to sit on this panel for such an impactful discussion. Looking very forward to it, and thank you all.
Hello everyone, my name is Brendan Hall. Happy Juneteenth, happy Freedom Day. It's nice to see everyone out and about. I am originally from Anderson, South Carolina, Pendleton, South Carolina, if anyone knows Bulldogs. My mother and my sister are here, Betty and Octavia. They join me today as well. I graduated from the South Carolina Governor's School for the Arts and Humanities in Greenville, South Carolina. And after 2 years of that, I went on to study at the Juilliard School in New York. I recently graduated from there in 2015. And I've been working in the entertainment industry as an artist, as well as an actor and a writer for 5 years now. I've been on certain shows such as God Friended Me, Search Party, Mayor, and I have been very lucky to be in a position where a lot of the roles that I've been able to do have been representation of society, right? I've been able to play a young black politician who got into politics through hip hop. I've been able to play a prophet who is an atheist, who discovers that his love for humanity brings him closer to God than any religion could ever do. And I look forward to continuing to do more work that uplifts my community, that raises questions, and that puts me in a position where I can be in more talks and more gathering like this. So I'm really, really happy to be in front of you all today. Once again, happy Juneteenth.
I am Dr. Kimberly Johnson. I have an undergraduate degree from UNC Chapel Hill. I have a master's degree from Clemson University in Youth Development and Leadership. I have a doctorate degree in curriculum teaching and leadership from Northeastern University in Boston. I have my postdoctorate from Harvard University in Advanced Educational Leadership. I am currently seeking a board certification as a behavior analyst. Who am I? I am a professor at Clemson University. I teach at Harvard University. I also teach at Clinton College, a small HBCU. Who am I? I am still a Black woman in America. So today is pivotal because it is a movement day. As all Juneteenths are, this is a movement day. Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863. It took 1865 for us to celebrate 2 years later, almost 2 years. Why We Can't Wait. Dr. Martin Luther King wrote the book, Why We Can't Wait. In 1964, he wrote it about the amazing civil rights movement of Birmingham, and he said it was considered the Negro Revolution. Why We Can't Wait. So today, this moment in time is because we cannot wait. We have waited for too long. I have all of the education I think I could possibly get, but I'm still a Black woman in America. Because education is a great equalizer. If I'm poor and Black, which I was, and I'm sitting in a classroom in Harvard with somebody who's socioeconomically advantaged, then if we study the same thing, then I'm just as smart as you, right? I'm still a Black woman in America. So education, for me, is my tool. It's my only tool, because I'm still a Black woman in America. A book is a tool that can build a believer. There's no time in the day for an underachiever. Focus on the future and develop a plan. Believe in yourselves, because I know that you can. Don't settle for the scraps of another man's plate. You're the one in control of your ultimate fate. So pick up a book and learn something every day, because a book is a tool.
I would like to ask you a question. Because today we celebrate Juneteenth. So I ask you, when you think of Juneteenth and its history, what do you think about? How does it make you feel? And I know Kim just gave a strong message. But I ask you, Carol, when you think of Juneteenth, how does it make you feel?
I'll be honest, it wasn't until even this week that I realized what this was. And today, as I was really thinking through everything, to me, it's an exciting time, the fact that we've gotten to where we are, but to me, it's also something that I look at and I know how much work we still have to do, especially those of us that are white, it's just something that I think that is such an awesome time in history, that happened. But I just know that, like I said, there's just so much work that needs to be done on our end, and, we want to be better, and we want to learn, and that's the biggest part. Learning about, Juneteenth is something, like I said, before this week that I didn't even know about. And so for me, I look at it and I say, okay, what's that next step? What else do I need to learn about that I didn't know about until this week? So.
Master Frank, also, Juneteenth. What do you think about it?
Yeah.
How does it make you feel?
Well, I'm a little embarrassed to say, like my co-panelists, that I wasn't even aware of it until this I heard on the news about 45's rally going in Tulsa, Oklahoma, supposed to be on this day, and didn't even know what the significance was about this day. And that Tulsa, Oklahoma is where Black Wall Street was. I didn't even know about it. And I'm a fairly educated person. Nowhere near as educated as my co-founders. But I didn't know. What I have always known, and let me just say, as far as Black Wall Street, that was basically kept under wraps until 1996. And it somehow got out. But it didn't get to me. That was back in like 24 years ago. And I didn't even know. And I'm a history buff. So, I don't like the fact that I didn't know that. And of course, the fact that now that it's out, and 45 was have a rally where Black Wall Street happened. And on this date, even though he's moved it to tomorrow, the sentiment's still there. This is a man who is absolutely inciting hate and ignorance, trying to conceal information from people. Information is powerful. Education is powerful. But information sometimes can be even more powerful. When people know, they can know how to react. You'll see how they react. But I guarantee you there's probably a huge number of people like us that just didn't know. What I always have known was that New Year's Eve is first night. African American community goes to church because it's first night. The first night, basically before, slavery and the abolishment of slavery, I believe it was the 14th Amendment, went into effect. I've always known about that, but never before about Juneteenth.
There's so much more about our history that we just don't know.
I would add on, I was going about like any other working class mom, just going through the chores of the day and not understanding the significance of the day until in 2017, so technically 3 years ago. I had the pleasure of participating in the Juneteenth rally around Charlotte, and I got to see the African culture, and I got to see like some of the memorabilia that I bought from there. And it got me thinking that why did my daughters, who are very much like out and about and talking about culture, talking about events happening, why didn't they tell me about this? And they were like, Mom, it's not taught in school that this is Juneteenth. And that got me curious, and I started asking the questions that why is it that you're not teaching kids the history of America? And it got me to feeling just, it's a power gradient, it's just somebody wins, somebody loses, and there is the systemic oppression that we are not celebrating the things that matters because it makes people feel power. As an individual, as a person who is employed by a company who supports Juneteenth, I'm doing my part of raising the awareness. And today was the first time, enterprise-wide, we celebrated Juneteenth in our own way, whether it be wearing a black attire, taking a knee, or just having a moment of reflection. We're proud of that progress.
This day means pride for me. Thankful for all the sacrifices my ancestors made just for me to have the ability or the rights to sit here in front of all of you today. I'm also more proud that the rest of the country can take acknowledgement in the sacrifices my ancestors made. They fought in the Vietnam War. They fought in World War I, World War II, the Revolution War. All these different wars just so we all have the same rights. And I'm very proud that they're getting the recognition that they deserve because they laid down their lives, not just for me, but for everyone, and that all needs to be recognized.
For me, I feel the same. I feel pride, I feel excitement, I feel a groundedness in my heritage that, that we are actually starting to take this holiday seriously. I've heard about this holiday. You hear about it in hip hop. You hear about it, on the fly. It's like, hey guys, it's Juneteenth. Oh, great, all right. Keep going about your day. but that we're actually taking our time now to really educate ourselves about what Juneteenth really means to us. And to me, that with everything that's going on, that also puts me in a position that I know that with the information that I have, going back to understanding our history, that we have to continue to make this happen. This can't be a one and done thing. So at the same time, I feel a little bit of unsurety of how Juneteenth is going to move forward. Because we're in a revolution right now, but I wonder what's going to happen next year. I wonder if we're going to celebrate it again as powerful as we are now. I wonder if our culture, our people are going to continue to invest in our own businesses, invest in ourselves, continue to uplift ourselves as we are doing now. So yes, the pride and the excitement and the celebration is definitely there, but also have a slight notion of, okay, next year, how can we grow from this now new tradition? You know? So.
Do you think Juneteenth should be a national holiday?
Absolutely, it should be a federal paid holiday. Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's a remarkable date, and I think, having a national holiday, it brings awareness. And there's some national holidays that I think become antiquated as well, like President's Day, for instance. Most people don't know what it's about. I mean, certain things need to be memorialized, like 9/11. That should be a national holiday, so we never forget. It's just as important as Juneteenth. People need to know, not so they won't forget. More importantly, so they'll be aware, and people will then know.
So that you know your history. Not really, it's all about histories. Right. I have another question for you all. What's the difference of how white America and black America view the government and the local and state officials? What's the difference of how white Americans think and how black Americans think when it comes to the government? Yeah, you can, sure.
I can't attest, to how African Americans feel about it because I'm not experienced with it. Now, Jimmy Kimmel put it perfectly. He did some show or something. He says people talk about white privilege. A lot of people don't understand what that is. And he's like, some people who are white who have to work for everything, barely getting by, after you say I'm privileged, it's not a financial reference. White privilege means you can conduct yourself every day in safety, without question, and with credibility, because you're white. Nobody's going to question if that's your car, if you steal it. It's not going to happen. So, I know how Caucasians, Jim Crow, I've seen it happen. I've seen it in history. I've even felt threatened by, there was a situation where I was having dinner with my friend, she was black. These two white guys were just kind of staring at us, almost like they didn't like seeing that happen in the restaurant. So I told her, I was like, those two guys, Jim Crow, So when we were walking to the parking lot, I walked her to her car, make sure she got in safe. And these two guys started walking to me. And I have to admit, I was a little fearful. It just didn't feel comfortable. And I wasn't packing at the time, so I don't carry my gun. But anyway, they came up and then they just kind of stared at me and then passed on by. But the whole point is, it could have turned into something very nasty. So I know how abhorrent white America can be, has been, and will continue. It amazes me that with all the intelligence, the information, technology, that there's so much of white America that's no more further advanced than they were fighting under Robert E. Lee. And it's shocking. But I asked them, I said, how does this happen? In 2020, how are we still having this conversation?
Why do you think it's happening? When you're around your friends, what other people, other white people, what are they saying?
Well, you've got quite a dichotomy. Now, I like to think I hang out with the right ones. Okay. But there are those that I couldn't even hang around with. There's some people that I've been in church with, that I just can't agree with them. See, I'm shocked as could be. There was a poll that came out, and it was on, I think, CNN, asking about, this was among white Republican voters. And there was different breakdown. Some said, we've done enough in this country. Some says we've done too much already. And then there were those that just had no opinion. I mean, it's like, what does that tell you? Now, I'm a lifelong Democrat, but I also know there are racist Democrats called Dixiecrats. And, they were running roughshod on LBJ until he ran roughshod on them and got the Civil Rights Law and Voting Rights Act of 64 and 65 passed through. But, I hate it. And some of it, I think, is mass ignorance. Some people grow up in a bubble. For instance, if you were born, let's say, March, and then you went on to high school, to country day, Charlotte, then you went on to Princeton, you're never surrounded by anything other than your own. And I think the true problem, and Dr. James Howell said this in one of his sermons, when you surround yourself by the same type of people as you become ignorant and arrogant. And I think that is a huge part, that ignorance and arrogance, coupled with people don't realize that their behavior can be offensive.
I hear what you're saying. And when I think of ignorance toward being a human being, and I think of because you're around certain people and certain people say things or you don't know because you're not in that environment or different environment. When it comes to just being people, like how can you be ignorant to just treating people fair, treating them equal? I don't understand when people say that because I have white friends, I do, and I have just being friends with me open up their eyes about things and just things that they say is mind-boggling to me because what they're saying to me makes no sense at all to me. Because you just cannot, I don't understand how you can believe that a group of people of a race, of one race, are bad people. So when you think of that, like my mother always say to us, she always say to me and my siblings, God gave you common sense. You know right from wrong. And if it doesn't feel right, you'll listen to your inside, listen to your inner self. You don't have to be around a group of people. You know you can feel that it's not right. So that's when I hear that, it's like an excuse or a reason that white people need to make them feel better. I don't know, I don't have the answer for it, but to me, it just doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
I totally agree. And I mean, ignorance can always, be used and vain as a defense. And rightfully so, many times. I was ignorant of Juneteenth. That's my defense. Case closed.
Well, you was ignorant to me. I was ignorant. Or I was, and a lot of people, when you hear what's going on, a lot of people know nothing about Juneteenth. And what I found out was, from reading, is the reason why we didn't know about Juneteenth, the reason why African Americans didn't know about Juneteenth is because when African Americans were free or not in slavery anymore, and they celebrated Juneteenth, when they were caught celebrating June 19th, they were lynched. So what happened is that people, our ancestors, they would hide and celebrate. But then I'm thinking because I'm using my common sense now. And I'm thinking about my ancestors. My mind is, when I read this, and I'm thinking about my ancestors, and I think they were trying to protect us because they didn't know what was going to happen. So they were trying to protect us. So Juneteenth, died down. It was hidden under the rugs. Like, we didn't know anything about it. So when I found that out and I read that, it gave me some sense of comfort because I realized that our ancestors always protected us. Even till today, from what they did back then to now, they're still protecting us. So it's not that you was just ignorant to it, it was hidden because it was a reason behind it.
That does make sense. I mean, you know, it's a shame, but back in those days, I mean, not that it's really changed a whole lot. I mean, we've got cameras and internet and all that stuff, but there's a lot of stuff that goes on that ain't on camera or the internet.
Yeah.
You know, you talk about, you know, police brutality, what we've seen, case in point, that's all that we have seen, which is no indicator of what has actually happened in the past, goes on every day. I mean, I think the first instance we probably saw was with Rodney King. You know, I guess that was probably the first time anything ever really got caught on tape. That was back in '94. I have to say, yeah.
I think America has a problem with when they tell a story, they only tell it from one side. And whatever that story is, we don't dig any further or we don't look at it from another point of view. Prime example, Juneteenth, as you articulated, but also too, if you look at it, we celebrate Christopher Columbus for discovering America. That's what they tell you, but I wonder if the Native Americans have a different view on that. But that's not the story that we're told or we're taught, and people believe and don't dig any further than that, unfortunately, and that's what we have as a problem here in America. We have to dig a little deeper. We take the first thing we hear and say, okay, that's good, that's great. It's a headline, okay, I kind of get it. And we need to dig a little further.
To your point, I'm sorry, go ahead. To your point, and back to your original question, I think that we've got to, first of all, recognize that white privilege is real. White guilt is real. So these are certain things we've got to acknowledge, because when we keep trying to say, well, we're not acknowledging. So we got to know those things are real, number one. Jane Elliott did a study, many of you may be familiar, brown eye, blue eye test. And she also came back years after and did a study with a group of affluent, prominent white people and asked them, do they feel that we are equal in America? Hands went up. The whole audience, yes. Do you feel that things are fair, that things are equitable? Yes. And then she asked them, would they trade places with a black person tomorrow? And all hands came down. So if there's truly that equity that we talk about, then why would you not trade places? And I think we've got to understand that this is good talking about it all, but this thing is systemic. It's down up in the roots of it. Because when I think about, you know, even my ancestors and the wealth that this country has, it is built on the backs of many people who were systemically deprived. So when you think about today, and I hear some of my white counterparts say, I don't understand why, you know, black people are so angry or black people are so, you know, volatile about the situation. It had to happen. Where we are right now, I'm not even shocked. I'm not surprised, I'm not overwhelmed, because it had to happen. As King said in '64, the Negro Revolution, this is it right now that we're in. And our young people are stepping up, and I'm so proud of them in the way that they are doing this, because they understand that this is a systemic problem. Mass incarceration. When you look at the numbers, yes, more white people are locked up, but their time is less than black people. So now we're in jail a lot longer than white people, even though it's the same crime. The disparities are deep. So we've got to understand that when you say the government, you're talking about a system that has perpetuated for years and years and decades and centuries. So we've got to understand that this thing isn't about just June 19th. It is a lot deeper, and it sounds good to celebrate it, and we always want to celebrate it, but we've got to start having the real conversations that will get us to the crux of how we got here. Because if you ask any white person, and there's my husband right there, a white man, and I will tell him a lot of times, when we go in somewhere, I said, I'm about to use your white privilege. And I mean it when I say it. Because I know what it is. Because I'm not living in a fog. I understand the realities of how we operate in this world. And that's what it is. And so I think we've got to start having these in-depth conversations and stop skimming the top of it. Because our kids need us adults to help them decide and figure out which paths they need to go. Because here's the bottom line, they're moving full speed ahead. We can either help them figure out a way to do it that is productive and powerful, or we need to get the hell out of the way. Because they're gonna keep moving, they're not stopping. And I'm glad, because it's the revolution that needed to occur. Because a system of government has gotten us to this point. It didn't just happen Rodney King or Tamir Rice. It didn't happen then. It happened way back when. It happened 402 years ago when we were dragged in this country in 1619, when the systemic problem started. So we can skirt it and say we need to fix this. But if we get to the gut of the government part of it, we got to get down to get up in there, unearth the system that is created. Yes, absolutely.
That's the only way.
Can I just touch on that?
Sure.
Your story just absolutely triggered a memory, and talking about using his white privilege. Now, a good friend of mine used to work for me, Ron, in Bush, he's black. We're very tight. I mean, he's great friends. However, he's always been on my phone. So when he needed to go, place his phone, whatever, to ride the store to South Park. And he called me up after that, telling me, of course, he'd been working all day. He walked in, and there were two young black guys working there. Would not even try to help him. Tried to downplay him, just push him out of the store, like, what do you want? And he was like, what are you talking about? I was like, my phone's over here. You just need to just download it back up on the cloud. That's all you can do. Which is not true, because the phone needed to be activated. And then they told him, it's like, okay, we did it. It's activated. It's fine. We tested. It's working. I even told the guy on the phone, because he had to get me on the phone to get this guy to do this. And I said, did you test it? Make sure you test it before you said it's working. So he said, yes. So he goes and drives home. Going to find out it's not working. And of course, he lives like 30 minutes away. Okay? Now, the point I bring up here, I had to go with him, a white man had to go in there to get the service he was entitled to. Shocking. And I even told the manager.
That was shocking for you.
The fact, well, I'm saying, the whole idea is the way they treated him.
Yeah, that was shocking for you.
I was
that
offended.
is African Americans' life.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
my point.
Yeah.
But even more so. And this is what the manager did. And she's lesbian, so she's, a minority. And I told her, I was like, Sean, why am I having to come into your store to get service? Somebody put up your own skin color. I don't understand that. I said, but you know what it is? It's South Park mentality. And let me tell you, it's not just white privilege. White privilege, that's that. But you got something even worse. It's the mentality, I call it South Park mentality. And you have to know South Park, Charlotte, North Carolina, to understand this. We're talking elitism, mindset, that if I'm around this element, I'm better than you. No matter what your color, it gets down to that. And that's why, he won't even go to the South Park store. He goes to another store. He's treated fine. But, like I said, that almost is a hidden element within what's going on.
Well, it sounds like that's just South Park privilege, white privilege, on just steroids.
Crack, steroids, yes.
So what you experience, we experience when we go to Pineville, when we go to South Charlotte, when we go to North Charlotte, when we go to North Lake. So that's everywhere. That's just not South Park. That's everywhere we go.
What really gets me is what really gets me is that this thing of people saying that look, I get that you're surprised that this happened, but this is something that if you've been to a public high school, if you've been to a public middle school, if you've been to a public elementary, which we've all, I'm guessing most, everybody go to private school, you were taught systematic racism the moment you walk through K-12 doors. That is, you are taught that. You can go to a lunchroom and see black sitting over here, white sitting over here, Latino sitting over here. You can go into the classroom and see black seated in the front because the teacher has to keep their eye on them. because you never know what they may do. Or you have the kids sitting in the back because we don't worry about them. And we don't want to care or hear about their story. But it's just so fascinating to me because of everything that's going on in the world. You're hearing this more and more and more. It's like, oh my goodness, I've never heard this before. This is shocking to me. It can't be shocking when these images, these videos, these traits, this religious culture, you go to church and see it. Malcolm X said that the most segregated time in American history is high noon on Sunday. Why? I live in Brooklyn, in New York. On my block, on Malcolm X Boulevard, my brownstone, there's an AME church, Seventh-day Adventist, and a Catholic church, and a liquor store, and a chicken store. And I guarantee you, on Sunday, I see them all walk past each other. They don't say hello, they don't say good morning. They go straight to their services, they have their service, and then they walk right back out. This is around us, and like you were saying, it is a systematic thing. And the moment that we're really ready, it's not the moment that we open our eyes, it's the moment that we're actually ready to open our eyes. We just walk outside and see it. We are built into this system. So it really baffles me when people say, especially when white folks say, excuse me, man, but the case, when they say that this is surprising, when they say that this movement is surprising, because it shouldn't be. Give you another example. The first time I stopped trusting the government, I really realized I stopped trusting the government. I've been stopped by cops twice in my life. One time they followed me all the way home, another time, story for another time. The first time I saw systematic racism was in school. In my English class, we had to watch Birth of a Nation. Has everyone seen Birth of a Nation? One of our president's favorite films ever made. And that's the moment that I saw racism really really cinematically shown, right? You got white folks in blackface, some black characters in the background actors, but you got white folks in blackface portraying what they believe is blackness. This devil, this evil thing, the man that rapes and brutalizes women, this, that, and the third. That movie came out ages ago. We still have pictures of people being lynched from ages ago that they put in the newspapers to make sure that black folks saw it, to make sure that you were fearful of the government, to make sure that you stayed in line, to make sure that you stayed inside your little communities that they're still systematically going through and destroying.
To make sure you don't.
To make sure that you are not a citizen. We were having this conversation in the car. If you have been incarcerated, in some states, you have to pay after you have been released from prison to vote. You have the same amount of worth and rights as a slave did, or as a black man did during Jim Crow in 2020. And you got people going to jail for dime bags. But then I can go to LA and see two white girls sitting in there rolling blunts. It is in our faces. So we cannot at all, we cannot anymore say that this is surprising. We cannot, and this is as a people, because I've heard black folks say this too. We cannot say that we are, oh my God, finally, we've been fighting this good fight forever. So because people are starting to riot and loot, because people are starting to go in front of the federal government and hold up their demands, doggone right, it's time for it.
Let me add to what he said. This is all, everything you said is absolutely spot on. This is like the rebranding of America. That's what we're sitting in, the rebranding of America. And you've got young people, and you can see the eclectic blend of people out there protesting. There's three types of people out there. You got the protesters, they're the ones that are really out there, the heart and soul is like, let's change the world, I'm gonna be a change agent for tomorrow. Then you got the rioters, and they're the ones that are pissed off. And sometimes I feel that way, so I'm gonna say, be transparent. Some days that's me, but I'm just pissed because it's too much. It's just too much. I don't want to bear the burden of making you feel not guilty for what has happened for generation after generation after generation. So I say, why are you calling me white person? Because I don't want to bear the burden of what you act have to deal with. So sometimes I'm pissed, so I'm a rioter. And then there's the looters out there who aren't there for any reason other than they're broken. Think about it. They're going somewhere stealing. They come from a different city and they're stealing. They're still broken. If we really look at it, they're broken. And so when you've got these people out there, they're saying, I want to be heard in some way. And you've got this new generation of protesters that are rebranding America, saying that, you know what, damn the government. Because I got to make a change. Because they're not changing things and I need to see it happen. And so we've got to really understand that this is, again, the tipping point that had to happen. So the government is no longer a threat, because there are so many times the government was a threat to us as black people. They're going to take your house, they're going to take your money, they're going to take your car, they're going to take this, which that fear, you know, civil rights movement, people wouldn't march, they were afraid of losing their jobs or getting lynched or being, you know, cast out. But now this new generation is saying, damn the government. We've got to create some change. And so this rebranding that we're seeing is something that is so monumental. And we're sitting in the middle of that. And that is a powerful place to be. So we've got to understand that the government is just a piece of this equation, because this new shifting of the dynamics is what's really going to create the change. I hope I see it in my lifetime. But we got to get on board if we expect it, because things die down. But the good thing about this group is they're not backing away. They're not going away. And so I said, that's why we got to either jump on board, help them elevate, or get the hell out of the way. Excuse me. Get the hell out of the way. Because we got to do something now, because this is the tipping point. This is the revolution that Dr. King spoke about. This is the revolution that Malcolm X spoke about. This is the revolution that all of our great iconic people, and not just the names that we know, but the average everyday people that gave their lives during the civil rights movement, during all of the protests for abolitionists. They gave their lives so we could be here at this moment. Look how long it has taken us to get here. How dare we sit while this is happening, because the door is open. It's not wide enough, but it's open now.
And on that same note, I was listening to James Baldwin, Who's the Nigger?
Oh, yeah.
If you haven't seen this, please Google James Baldwin, Who's the Nigger. It's one of the greatest speeches, other than his artist struggle for his integrity. And what James Baldwin was talking about white America having to face the terrible question of creating the Negro. That was a representation of themselves putting out on other people that they could not understand who they were. And that is one of the things that the rebranding that is happening.
Yep.
One of the quotes that I learned in school was, as an artist, we are taught to hold the mirror up to society. That is our duty, to hold the mirror up to society. Because if I can show you what you are doing, maybe you can create a change within yourself. Yep. And that is what's happening in our culture. White America is now saying, oh my goodness, look at all we have to dismantle as a people from what our ancestors have done. And now, because of the internet, they have no reason to. Because I can only imagine out of the white folks that are in here, you have no idea what it's like to go on your phone every single day and see your brother, your sister, your mother, your cousin, your uncle being murdered and being able to watch it. But now we can. Now everyone has to see it. And so I think that with that rebranding, and we also as a culture have seen what our dollar can do, our economical dollar, because we shut down H&M, we shut down Gucci, and now we're like, okay, well actually we're in a pandemic, we all at home making stuff. How about we just invest in ourselves? You know, if as black folks we are the richest economical folks in this country, but we spend the most dollars outside of our own people. Makes zero sense.
Do you think that's what white America's afraid of?
Of course, because once you hit the dollar, then what do you have? Who's on front of the dollar? It's not Harriet Tubman, they tried that. Who's on front of the dollar? You got George Washington and a whole bunch of other white dead presidents. But the moment it gets into a black hand, into the black economical, which we were talking about outside, into the circuit, then it's like, oh, wait, you guys actually know this culture much better than we do. Why? Because it goes back to what you said. We built this. Yep. This is ours. Black Wall Street. This entire street.
If you go to the African American Museum in DC, I mean, it tells a story. It tells our story. Have you all been there? Yeah. It tells a story, and within that story, it tells. I took so many pictures when I went there. I need to be a photographer. I needed a photographer. But, I mean, when I saw and read that Black people, Black Americans, build 60% of America, 60% of America. I didn't need to see nothing else. That's all I needed to see. And I could have just cried right there. And what was our population at that? I don't remember.
So I'll give you another one. Did you know 40% of the military is your brothers and sisters? Did you know that? Every time they hide behind the flag saying, hey, their ancestors fought, did you know 40% of the military is your brothers and sisters? So they're fighting just along there, but you know, they like to exclude that out. But yeah, they're on the front lines. We're 3 times as likely as anyone else to be on the front lines, whether they have officer titles, etc., while we're out there on the front lines dying for this country. So a lot of times when they hide behind that flag, they know that your brothers and sisters are the ones out there on that front line sacrificing their lives for freedom. They don't tell you that either.
No, they don't. In history, I mean, in schools we learn absolutely nothing about African American history. We learn nothing about it.
You know, I think some of it too has to do with the fact, I can think about growing up in middle school and high school, is that I always felt like, and even when I went to Chapel Hill, really, because I went in the 80s, and it was still that kind of, you know, you were lucky to get in kind of thing. We're still checking off boxes. If you're Black, if you're this, you're that, you can get in because they needed so many Black students to get funding. Right. So, you know, I could get in. Staying in is another problem we got to face because we can get in, but can we stay in is the question because the support systems need to be there. But I think too is when I went to high schools that were predominantly white, or I went to a college that was predominantly white, I had the feeling to assimilate into the culture that I was around. Like I gotta be this way in order to fit in because my Blackness was not, it wasn't welcomed. And so we gotta feel like that where we are, that it is a welcoming space, that we can be our authentic true selves when we walk into that space and not just have to assimilate to where we are. Because that assimilation, yes sir, I'm sorry.
Does that go back to the question, who am I? What you just said.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, one more thing.
Sure.
So Dr. Franz Fanon said, an educated person or person in general should be able to ask and answer 3 questions. Who am I? Am I who I am? Am I all that I really ought to be? When you just made that statement, you just had to bend yourself to maneuver to fit in. How did that make you feel then, and how does that make you feel now?
Then I felt like I had to do it because I didn't have a choice. Now I do it because I don't do it now because I don't have to do it. And if you remember from the great debaters, I believe it says, do what you have to do until you can do what you want to do. As a children's author, I'm also a children's author. I've written 22 books. The first book I wrote, I wanted to write a book about our people, my kids, my community, so we could see our Black and brown faces in the story. But I had a mentor, a teacher at Fayetteville State who told me, because we were living there at the time, she said, Kimberly, she says, you need to build your name, your reputation, let people know who you are, let them see your work. And so basically what she was telling me is don't come out of the gate with a book about Black people because it's going to hinder you. But she basically was telling me, and I said, I don't know what that means. She goes, you're a smart girl, you'll figure it out. And she essentially was telling me, write a book that has no face, no color, no gender, no nothing, and write that cute, beautiful story, get people bought into the story, and then you can do what you want to. So I did that for 10 years. I wrote the Itty Bitty Frog, the Itty Bitty Bunny, the Spider and the Mouse, all these people's stories, and they built my reputation, my name, my work as a children's author. And now that that door was open, I'm wide open now. I'm writing books about Black people that we didn't know about. I'm writing about Black and brown little girls and boys. I'm writing about people who look like me, who think like me, and who go through the changes and feelings that I had to go through. So that gives me power. I'm pouring in. We got to start pouring back into the young people that we are in charge of. Because there's somebody you are in charge of, whether you know it or not. Here is one of the young men right here, Tavian. His book, hold your book up. I know you got it. You better carry it because I told you to have it. Dear Black Boy, Now here is a young man who now has learned, because I'm pouring into him as much as I can, Janet, everybody pouring into these young people. Now they can tell the stories and realize that they don't have to live a single narrative like I did when I went to Chapel Hill, walking on that campus as one of the lonely black girls on campus who found a few other black kids to coordinate and correlate with. So now I don't have to, I can be my authentic self. I'm living with a white man and I'm up here doing all this black talking. That's because I can do that, because I am truly my authentic self.
Unfortunately, it doesn't stop at school though, because everyone deals with that in corporate America.
Absolutely.
Always trying to conform yourself.
Systems.
Systemic racism and the system of oppression that's built. Sorry.
Can I just say a different thing about growing up as a black African American woman? My parents are from Africa, straight from Africa, okay, from Liberia and Nigeria. And I was born here. So growing up in my household, I know firsthand that my ancestors were kings and queens. My grandfather owned the whole town. We had gold. We had, they still there and they own land all over. So I had a sense of confidence. And I knew nothing they could tell me makes, I didn't even see the racism, honestly. Because my mother lived and was rich, and my grandfather, right from the first, our people need to know that story.
Yes.
We only know the slave and the hardship and all. You need to know that, yes, the wealth in Africa. You know what I'm saying? That's what people need to, that's what our people need to know and have confidence in. Because I saw something about, would you go back to Africa if you were, asked to go back? Oh yes. I was there 3 years ago and it looks just like America. Because our people, when they were, freed, they went back to Liberia. And that's where they build their homes and things. And it looks just like America. So I think our people need to see and hear more about that story instead of we were enslaved and we were this and we were that. Because my whole childhood up to now, I hold my head up high. I stand and I do a conference and it's all white people in the audience. And I'm not intimidated at all because I know where I come from.
Because that empowered you. That's why it's so important to know where you come from. It's so important for African American people for us to know where we come from because we have been lied to our whole life. Since 1619, we have not been told the truth, so we don't know. And when we hear stories about Africa, they are not good stories. When we hear stories about our ancestors, we don't want to connect to it because it makes us shame, it makes us feel bad. But until you know the truth about where you came from, you're going to continue to live the same life. You will not be empowered.
Yeah, I was going to say, to her point as well, that's part of the system, right? If I can control you to not think or even know your worth, I really have you, right? So it's one thing for me to close the cage door and lock you in. But it's one thing when I can have the door wide open and you still think you can't get out, right? So again, when we talk about truly a system that works for 400 years, it's me not telling you where you started off from. It's me letting you know that you're no more than someone who started off not as a slave or as someone who was enslaved, right? Because I wasn't a slave, we were enslaved, right? So again, if we never know those stories, it goes back to the system of education. We're taught with slavery. I'm taught I was a slave, I taught I was free by Abraham Lincoln, and then Martin Luther King saved the day, and we're all good.
And then Barack came by.
And that was it, right?
And you should be happy.
And you should be happy. Absolutely. So we have to teach
exactly what you're saying. Like, where do we
Absolutely.
spend majority of our time as kids? We spend majority of our time in school, right? So then once 3 o'clock, that bell has ended, and they've taken all the funds out of the after school programs. You can't go to sports because this and third. You go home, and then you got to wait for your mom or your dad to come home. You got to learn all these things of how to grow up as a young adult, and then they come home, and you expect them to teach you Black history? Absolutely not. They got to get ready for the next day. But It goes back to what you were saying before. Me, going to Juilliard, going to the South Carolina Governor's School in the RCM and Humanities, I had to find my pride in that pain of knowing that I can code switch, right? I had to understand that I knew 2 languages before I could even write it down on a piece of paper. I didn't know Spanish, I didn't know French. I knew white, I knew black. Those were 2 languages I knew how to maneuver, and I knew that if I could understand this one as well as I understood the streets, I could make it somewhere. I have no problem doing that. I hold my head in pride knowing that I've learned how to do that over the years. How to survive. Exactly, how to survive. But now where it's come to as I've gotten older and wiser is understanding that survival mechanism didn't have to be in place. When I went to these schools that are talking about theater, that's talking about acting, talking about culture, I should learn more than August Wilson. I should have known more than William Shakespeare. I should have known that these other brilliant poets were blacks. Exactly. I completely agree with both of you. I think what Malcolm X said is true. Every black person should attend an HBCU for 2 years. Why? Because once you know who you are in your history, can't nobody stop you. Nobody stop you.
I believe we as parents, we do have a responsibility to our children because they're not teaching it in school. And we have the power of the internet. Everything's in our fingertips. When you're scrolling on through your Facebook and you see all these different stories, it's our responsibility to make time to share these with your kids because, I went to school and I learned about Martin Luther King. And I remember in kindergarten, and I ran home, and Martin Luther King was born in 1928-29. That's the same year my dad was born. I ran home and I said, "Oh, did you march with King?" He told me, "Hell no." And I said, "Why not?" I was like, "Why not?" He's like, "So I can get the hell beat out of me?" No.
And he's saying it well, and not get spit on.
Yeah, and so they can beat and spit on. He said no. Yeah. So it's like, but my dad, he taught us a sense of pride. He wasn't educated to the point where he could tell me about our history or the transatlantic slave trade and things like that, but he instilled a sense of pride in me that when we read those stories and I was told that I was beautiful, I never looked in the magazines or in the book and felt like I wasn't because my parents instilled that in me and they instilled pride in me. So we still have a responsibility to our children to do these things. If you look at other cultures, I believe it's the Japanese culture here, they have one of the biggest libraries in Charlotte, and they teach their kids, so we do have a responsibility, and it's time for us to live up to that responsibility because we have this systemic racism, and you have, white people that say, when I meet white people, I never think racism already play itself out to me. You understand? Because I never assume anything. And so I learned to be that way. But you got people that they don't have that in their heart. But what we do want you to do is like just scoot over. You know what I'm saying? If treat us equal, just scoot over. And sometimes I think, I've had white friends where we've had great relationships, but they've had other friends, and I can see that tearing, kind of weighing on our relationship because they would get jealous or, wouldn't like that, oh, you're so close to this black girl,
Because babies aren't taught to be racist. Babies come in this world needing love and affection and needing to survive. Racism is a taught thing. And like you said, when I was at Pendleton High School, I tell this story all the time because it's significant. When I was in middle school, I opened up my history textbook and I saw my uncle's name in it. That is a textbook that my uncle used when he was in school, and I'm learning the same things. These are things that are being passed down, and that just goes to say that racism is learned behavior.
It is learned behavior.
This hatred, these things are learned behavior, and the moment that we can break those generational changes.
But what it is more powerful than the learned behavior. It is an evil. It's evil. It's evil in the world, and we have to admit that there's evil in the world, and racism is one of them, and we have to resist
the evil of racism every day. Each and every one of us does. And until we resist the evil and we can prevail. And we have to prevail, so we have to resist the evil that is racism. And it's all of our responsibility.
You know,
Thank you. Just to your point, Dr. Howell, again, he's the senior pastor at Myers Park United Methodist Church. I listen to a lot of his work. Brilliant man. It was about 2 Sundays ago, I guess, and he said, it's not enough for us to not be racist. He said we have to be anti-racist. You know, and basically, we're going to flip the script. We've got to be intolerant of intolerance. We've got to hate. We have to abhor, and we need to discriminate against those who would discriminate. When society embraces that, you'll see social change.
And I'm going to respectfully disagree with some of that. Because you said, to be anti-racist. To be anti-racist is not enough. Because if you're just anti-racist, you are still not being inclusive. Anti-racist says that I'm not going to dislike you because of this, that, or another, but I'm still not including you in who I am. So we have to understand that in order for us to really, truly balance the field, that my experiences need to be a part of your experiences, and your experiences need to be a part of mine. Therefore, just saying that I'm okay with white people, or I'm okay with black people, I'm not racist, is really not enough, because we still have to dig a little bit deeper. And that means I need to get to understand where you come from, how you feel, your pain. I have to empathize with what you go through. You said pride. Pride is an important thing, but again, we go back to that initial question of the government, the systems. How can you have pride if you are snatched from your family and you can't be a father, or you can't be a mother, and you can't be there to support your child, or your child sees that everything that they have gets taken away, and then now they are feeling some kind of way about themselves because they feel that their environment doesn't support them.
I think we have to get grounded and rooted in something.
Yeah, something.
And as a people, I think family, I think that's major. You need to have a nuclear family, a two-parent family, and until we as Black Americans get grounded and rooted in something, we're going to be easily snatched and pulled. But it's very hard to destroy a family.
But we have to be
I mean a nuclear family. It's very hard to destroy a nuclear family that you have two parents that are working, that are sustaining those children. It's very hard to destroy that family if they're rooted and grounded, if they're both, they both have jobs, they have a belief system, they have, different things in life to add to who they are, to build them up. It's very hard to tear that down. And I think that's something we have to do as Black Americans, is to bring back Black families.
Yeah, I think it's important to have that, but we are always going to have those mitigating factors. Drugs, I know two parents taking good care of their kids, the kids hooked on drugs. Why? They have everything. They have that rooted nucleus that you're talking about, but those mitigating circumstances, the outliers, if you will, are keeping them from being rooted. So it does take a village, so to speak. You've got to have that nucleus, then you've got to also be good listeners to your young people, because they're telling us every day what they need. Like now, they're screaming to us, and we're not listening. We really aren't. Some cases, yes, I don't think a lot.
Why do you think that the parents and the older people are not listening?
Because we don't want to hear that.
Why
We don't want to hear that.
Why do you think that they don't?
Because sometimes I think people just want to keep the peace. We're good right now, just leave it alone, let it go. I mean, I heard my grandparents say that. When I was, you can imagine, I was that child out there, I want to change the world. And my grandparents would get frustrated with me sometimes because they wanted me to just let it go. And I think we lived in it for so long that now we just kind of go with the flow. Or I'll hear this sometimes, and this is among my people, I'm going to get mine. It's not about you getting yours, because, and I don't know who said this, we always want to give everything to Martin Luther King, but he might not have said this, but, we haven't arrived until we all have arrived. And I truly believe that, is that we have got to make sure as African Americans that we are building our own wealth, our generational wealth. Because you look at 1921 and you talk about in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and you think about Black Wall Street, it was a threat because you had over 300 people, 300 businesses right there in that little circle making tons and tons of money. So it was a threat, so it had to be destroyed. It was shut down. Martin Luther King was a prolific voice. He had to be shut down. Malcolm had to be shut down. We're getting shut down in our own little pockets because we don't network. We don't collaborate. We don't work together like we should. And so we come together and we complain about the way the system and the government is, but yet we are not taking care of each other like we should. Like for every young black or brown boy or girl, there should be somebody in that community with arms wrapped around. Just because if mama and daddy can't do it, you might be in the neighborhood and you might see them doing something. It used to be parents and grandparents say, what you doing down there? Get back up here. It didn't have to be your mom and dad. It was whoever was in the community and they watched. But now we've gotten so elite that we don't want somebody talking to our child. And I get the world has changed and we have to be careful. But I also believe that there are some older generations in that intergenerational connection that have good wisdom. But they feel like they've been kicked to the side, so they don't say anything. They just kind of sit back and say, well, whatever y'all do. So we need them.
Yeah, we need that. So how do you think we collectively as a race get there? How do you think we get there to whereas
We got to help each other more.
how do we do that? How do we do that?
Let me ask the question first. Get where?
Get there to where we're united, the African American are united.
I was having a conversation with my sister about this, right? Other than being in school and being at home, I found growing up, spent the majority of my time in church, right? And we all know that after slaves were free, and even during slavery, the church and religion has always been a staple in the African American community. Imagine if you went to church, and yes, we taught from the good book, basic instructions before leaving this earth, we taught from the Bible. But then we sectioned off a time where Brandon came in and spoke about real estate. We sectioned off a time when you came in and talked about Black issues. We sectioned off a time where we actually invest back into ourselves. Let alone, I'm giving 10% to a church. I'm giving my money into a church to help them build themselves up. What if that church gave me a refund check back at the end of the year for being such a dedicated member, for investing my 10% to you? You came back and gave into my family. Instead of my pastor riding around that Chrysler 300C, and I still got my broke down Toyota Sonata or something, you invest back into my family, and you teach me how to invest that money into my community to help the church again. I think if we all collectively are at church, if we can't knock down the educational system, if we can't do that in a good amount of time, if we can't do these other things that's going to take a lot of time to actually get the progress, the church is so progressive and is sitting on so much wealth that we can use that to actually enhance ourselves as a community.
I love that idea because I love that platform, and I think to your point, what does success actually look like? And it's to Wall Street, it's financial freedom. That's the only way we're going to get freedom in this country is financial freedom, right? And it's to your point, I love using that platform, and we need to have 3 buckets of how we do that. That is to the police reform, that's the education. We had a great conversation out there of different things we can do financially to empower each other, and that knowledge is not being passed down from generation to generation. We need to have a way to do that and have people give it back, share their history, know where they come from, and that's an awesome platform to have, and that's a great idea, and I love it, and I hope it doesn't stop right here with an idea, and we actually take that idea and take it the next step further.
I agree, because those are the only institutions that we have. In our neighborhood, Clinton Chapel and Zion Church, I grew up at this church that I could step out my door and walk to their front door, and I didn't know it was 200 years old until like a year ago.
And I was like, this is amazing. We didn't know we had institutions that's been around that long. Black people, we don't know we have things that are so monumental to us, and we're like, but now the church has, you know, well, it's not that they have an agenda, but now a lot of the black churches now, you have, I mean, we're lucky in our churches, we have 70 people on a Sunday. So churches have integrated. Black people we're turning our backs on our churches, and they're the only things that have been here. Our churches produce the highest, they produce high level society people. And they have, and they continue to, but we're turning our backs on them.
Well, I think it has to go deeper than that, right? Because I think leaving it there, it doesn't put the accountability on anyone, right? So when we talk about the church and what the church has done for our community, it has been a staple for a very, very, very long time. But I think we've only contributed to the spiritual being of people and not the holistic development of
That's
people.
why we need to go back.
Absolutely.
Because that element that they're missing, that we're educated and now we see that, oh, there's this element and that element, we're not returning. We're giving that gift or that knowledge somewhere
Correct.
else.
But the church has to return to us as well, right? So back to your point, I can preach all day. I'm a preacher's kid, right? So we can talk all day long about the church being empty now. It is, right? But there's reasons why, right? So if we really want it to be filled again, instead of making the excuse or talk about people not coming, we need to figure out the why and fill that in. And I think what you said was really, really great, that we have to speak to people's whole life. That's always a reason for me to come if you invest in me, right? So again, we have to grow to that model. But even beyond that, we have to gain power economically and financially, right? We don't have the power. We don't own anything. So we don't have a voice in a lot of spaces. So we have to talk about ownership and what that looks like. And then thirdly, and I'll shut up, we have to vote, right? We have to vote, and not only vote for the white person, we have to grow people who can then run for the seat as well, right? We push people to only vote, but we never push the person to grow to the leadership level needed to actually be the one running.
And
so not only
demands, our vote need to come with demands.
But it's easy for me to demand Dr. Johnson as my black neighbor rather than Jeff. Right. So again, not only telling you to vote, but helping you get in a position to be the one we vote for is a whole other piece that we have to think about as well.
But also when you talk about voting too, what I realize with people, when you talk about voting, and most people when they vote, especially African Americans when they vote on the presidential level. They don't vote locally. They don't understand why. So, I mean, they hear people like, I've actually been talking to people lately, and they talk about, but they say we need to vote now. We need to vote now because we just had the election. And they don't really understand why they're voting now. They don't understand it. So I think it's just like, I gave an analysis of, I was talking to someone, I can't remember. And I said, you have to really explain things to people. Like they really don't really understand. It's just like when you're learning math and you're learning fractions, you have to break it down. I know they do fractions different than when I was in school, but the way I did it, we broke it all the way down to get to that answer. So that's what I see when it comes to voting and explaining it to the people so they will understand why they're voting and what they're voting for, how important it is to vote. Because even like voting for the magistrate, they don't even understand. They just think all judges are the same. They don't know that there are different type judges for different situations. They have no clue, no idea. So it's easy for everyone to just keep saying, go vote. It's important to vote. Vote when, vote why. What is the reason behind it? And I think we really need to explain why they're voting. Because I even listened to Michelle Obama becoming. I watched her story. I listened to her story. And she talked about how much their campaign, how much everyone fought so hard for everyone, especially African Americans, to vote. And I listened to her. And as smart as she is, I'm listening to her. And I said, and she was hurt. She was so hurt because they worked. I mean, I didn't realize they were working that hard. They were working extremely hard. And I said to myself, she didn't even understand why. Because people really don't understand. You're just saying vote. Vote for what? Vote why? What is the reason? You have to break it down to people.
So to your point, you vote for the judges. The judges are the one who's going to prosecute that officer.
Right.
The district attorney, the person who's going to actually prosecute that officer.
Right.
So to the state and to the local level,
Exactly.
you have to understand, because that's what's going to affect you the most. Not just the president, because that's.
But they don't understand that. But people don't
Exactly.
understand that. They don't understand that. So we have a duty to make sure that people understand the why behind it. Because it's a big why. It causes us our life. It's for your life. Your life depends on it. I mean, the lives before you depended on it because our ancestors fought so hard for us to vote. But we don't even understand the reason to vote.
Is everyone in here registered?
Yes.
Everyone is registered. If you do not, vote.org. Just go to vote.org, take out 10 minutes of your day. It's very quick, and you can do absentee.
So it's a national registry.
You can go straight to vote.org and they'll do it all for you right there.
Because without changing your education and what you're teaching, you got to change the Board of Education.
Yep.
And that's locally. So if you don't know what their agenda is, you're not going to change education.
And then there's something now, and Brandon, you may be able to speak to this, that you can ask for the mail-in just in case.
Absentee.
Absentee, thank you. That we need to go ahead and start getting that thought in our head.
Another thing about that is that
Run against the wire.
when you mail it in, because this across the board, we did it. And me and my wife were thinking, some people are not going to go to the post office, buy a stamp, stand in line the entire time. Some people are just not going to take that next step. But we didn't think that ahead of time. You see, because some people like, we're going to just absentees, we're just going to mail it in. But that line is long. Are you willing to stand in that line? I am.
Yeah, me too.
Right. So that's just a thought.
Okay,
Introduce him.
Bernard, thank you for joining us. Hopefully I pronounced your name correctly.
Nobody ever does, so you're good. Manoj.
Yes, thank you for joining us. Manoj. Yeah. Thank you for joining Raw Uncut.
Yeah.
And I would actually go on to my next question. With everything being said, do you all think that seeing the image of George Floyd being murdered for 8 minutes and 46 seconds on national television leads to the diverse group of protesters? What made it different this time when you compare it to all the other times?
I've been
Yeah.
Sorry. I was going to speak to that because I was in Cleveland and when Tamir Rice was shot, my kids were young and it went through. Like I was just working and it was just another shooting. I didn't see the video and I wasn't like impacted by it. But this time what's different for me is I watched it. I watched it with my family. I watched it with my kids who were disgusted with what they saw. I was disgusted with what I saw. And the Times video, I don't know if you've seen that, the whole 8 minutes clipping, that really tells the story. And I was angry after I saw that entire video that it was just based on some premises and the store owner was an Asian American. So I internalized that who called the cops were Asian Americans. The 2 people who approached him first were Asian Americans. The cop who was another cop who wasn't Asian who didn't do anything. And that was just like my breaking point. And what are we doing? We're not just modeling order either. We need to speak up.
I agree. She said the tipping point. Yeah. So faces of break. But and I understand, and I think it is a tipping point. What has baffled me, vexed me for so many years, is why is it taking so long to get to the tipping point? I mean, you see people shot in their car with their hands stuck out the window, and the DA says officer was in fear of his life, you know, with the daughter in the car. I mean, what kind of a person would do that? I mean, so it takes us almost to the problem. You know, we literally have a human problem, you know, and granted, you can probably characterize that problem demographically and by race, statistically, this and that, and it's true. But still, it's a human problem. Why, to your point, you said, how could you just not be nice to somebody? How could you take pleasure in just doing these things to somebody? And for what reason? You know, I just, again, I'm glad it's happened. Thank God it's starting to happen. But it's a long, long way.
So is your query to why it's taking so long, is that to white America or is that to black America? Because there is a difference. So
U.S. and Europe. Oh. Why is it taking so long? As a nation, you know, why has it taken so long? With evidence, you know, absolute crystal clear evidence in the age of information. We're seeing these videos happen. You know, years ago, a man who shot his back running away. You know, it's right there. And yet DAs are like, whatever.
So I'm saying, is your query to white America or is your query to black America on that?
Why is it taking so long for white America to see it?
Well, for us as a nation to react, yes, my query would be more to white America as it relates to, you know, the diversity of the protests we see now. Because what was about 2 years ago, I forget the gentleman's name, he was shot here in Charlotte. You know, we had our first protests and riots and so on. And that was pretty much dominated, for the most part, African Americans. Now you have diversity. You haven't seen that before. Now I see this diversity in the protests as a glimmer of hope. That maybe we have, as a nation, turned a corner, taken one step closer, you know, to unifying behind a common cause, or a cause that's played, you know, a certain sector of our society. But again, I still will always be, why did it take so long?
Can I answer part of your question to why it's taking so long? I'm gonna go back to your first response, and I'm not attacking you, trust me. You was talking about Rodney King earlier, okay? And you were talking about these incidents now that's happening. The reason why it's taking so long is because, let me do this. You guys are not doing anything to help us. That's why it's taking so long. You can look on television, we was raised, I was born in the 60s, okay? I was born in 66, so I was born in the era. So everything that has happened in each protest that has begun or has taken place, it's not that we have not been speaking. It's not that we have not been on the street saying, this is wrong, help us. Who can we go to help us?
It's not going to change until white America.
And white America, that's why she kept
scared.
asking the question, who are you speaking of? Are you talking about them? And we hate to say it this way, but it is what it is.
The
reason why it's taken so long is because white America don't want to open their eyes to what is happening.
They're scared.
And just like my sister here,
the whole second side is scared.
I want to hear you, and I want to hear both of you guys speak. I heard you. When you saw the video, and this is what you said. It was my Asian. It was us. It was us. We were the one that called. And when I have to say we, because we are a nation of people. Okay? You're a nation, she's a nation, I'm a nation, we're a nation of people that's supposed to come together as brother and sisters. According to Christ, we are all one. So I'm having to say, she said, it was us that called. Now I'm ashamed. What did he do that you had to call the police that you could not resolve on your own? That's what you said, is it not? That's what I heard. And it was about a $20 bill.
Which is not proven yet.
Which is not proven, but at the end of the day, what you're saying is, why could we not resolve this issue without having to call the police? Why? Because there is but you got bullseye on our forehead. And it's a bullseye on our sons and our black men back. That's why. And it has been programmed in the society's mind that we are the bad people. And to be honest with you, we're not. We're the most forgiving, most loving, most caring. How in the world can we be the bad people when our family, our mothers was raising your children? Our ancestors was raising, especially our mothers who had to work in the houses of white owners. We raised your children. So if we raise your children and your children come out to be productive, there is a question on top of my head right now. So if we raise your children to be productive in society, why isn't our children? Why are we animals? Why are we less than? And it's the same mother that raised yours, that raised mine. So you see what I'm saying? When white America stand up, and that's what we're seeing, and said, you know what, it's enough. And now I'm going to unite with my brother. And we're going to go for the race card. Put your card on the line. Stick it out there. You're going to lose some family. You're going to lose some friends. You're going to be called some names that you didn't
Welcome to my world.
come up out of. Okay? But you know what? When they disown you or put you out of your nation, you have a nation that will embrace you as we always have.
And just let me say, I appreciate that. I'm already there. So let me tell you, I'm there. I hear
That's the answer to your question.
Jeff, what did you have to say? Because he ain't got no white fans.
I just know I go to work every day, and every morning I get pissed because the conversation is one-sided, and it's that side of white America is our problem. And believe me, Black Lives Matter. They think it's a gang. It's
They don't
true.
believe that.
Till this morning, yesterday was the first time they heard about Juneteenth. I mean, you know what I'm saying? I hear this at work. And so I'm educating. I said, Black Lives Matter is not a gang, right? It's a movement because Black Lives Matter is like everybody else. They're not saying nobody else's does. It says Black Lives Matter too. You have to add them to the matter, And they're like,
It's going to take you all to educate yourself so that now you can educate.
But it's a large group.
So it goes to messaging. George Floyd was the first one where you couldn't put a message and say, oh, his life is in danger. Oh, he's a bad person. Oh, whatever it is, you had nothing out of that 8 minutes and 46 seconds where you can take a messaging and turn it into, oh, he's a gangbanger. Oh, well, the cop was fearful for his life. This was the first time where you saw the entire video and you had nothing, no messaging that you could put out there, and everyone had to really look in the mirror and be honest with themselves and be like, okay, we have a problem. We knew this, but everyone else finally had to your point, had to look in the mirror and said, no, this is a problem, this is my problem, and it's time for me to step up and do something.
You know what I heard though? You know what I heard? Oh, they're making it sound like he was this great guy. Look at his record. What's his record got to do with with today? You know what I'm saying? But they're trying anyway.
They're looting.
Yeah.
No, forget the looting. I don't care about the looting. I don't care about some jeans out of Target. I don't care about that, right? I care about somebody who died 8 minutes and 46 seconds on his back, crying for his mama.
Handcuffed.
Like, that is why they are marching. I don't care about the looting. So what America does is they change the narrative, or they tell one side of the story. That's it, and that's all I need to hear, and I can run with that. But for George Floyd, you cannot change the narrative on that video, and that's when everyone had to look in the mirror and be honest.
It's like all the right things happen, unfortunately, for America to admit in this video, to admit like they didn't have a rebuttal. It was no, silence. He punched back really hard. He fought really. It was none of that.
Right, but that's what's been happening in the majority of the videos. I mean, I can't breathe. My brother, what's his name?
Right, but it's like I'm like, what?
Yeah, in New York. The
Yeah,
guy,
right.
the young white, yeah.
Eric
Eric
Garner.
Garner. But like these are video. I think also this was a moment where you got to see a white man look into the camera and say nothing.
With his hands in his pocket.
No, not him. The
No.
cop who's on his neck looks into the camera
Yes.
and someone is like saying, "Get off his neck, get off his neck," and he is looking to the camera with so much hate and so much fury and this kind of I own this. This is what I was meant to. Superiority.
Yeah.
And then later we find out all these other things. But I was in, like, to what you were saying when you found out about the verdict, I was in Florida when we found out about Trayvon Martin. I was down in Kissimmee, Florida. I was also down there when we found out that George Zimmerman was going back selling Skittle packets. You know, so it goes to the narrative of the story, but it is also the fact that we, like you said, we saw it. There is nothing that can say that this man is not guilty. Now, if he does not get it convicted, if he doesn't get convicted, if these 3 hangings that's happened doesn't get, the justice that they deserve, if the rest of the killings that have happened since this has happened, if that doesn't come back with the type of results that we need, if the Republicans go through with this new plan, which is the exact same plan that they had proposed before, if that goes through, you're gonna see worse.
Yeah.
It's like what Pop said. If you've been doing this for years, you expect me to turn the other cheek. You know, if you speak German and I speak French, there is no communication between us unless we can understand the same language. If you come with a gun and you expect me to come with prayers and Bibles, that didn't work before.
Right.
So the conversation now is we're talking on the same level, and white America is scared of that. And that's why they come up and said, okay, whoa, we've got a problem.
Yeah.
Before this turns into a war, let's find a way to settle this all out. We're past that.
You know what?
And I'm sorry, I believe you wanted to say something too.
Oh, no, it's all good. Because first of all, I feel like one of the most important things I can do is listen. So glad to be here to listen to all of you. And as you were saying too, the other thing is, especially in the South, but all over America, everything's a black and white issue, but America is like, blacks are no longer the largest ethnic minority, so there's so many newer immigrants here. And one of the things, again, I feel like is so missing from the education is that I personally have taken a little bit of effort, and my black friends have helped me. I realized the debt of gratitude that I owe to the black community, because if not for all the sacrifices of the centuries that the black leadership, black people have done, I would be here doing what I'm doing now. So we all hold a huge debt of gratitude, which again, I don't think none of the newer immigrants are aware of. So I feel like, people like me, what we can do, first of all, is listen and help, and also educate people like other brown people to stand behind and help in every way we can.
I feel like a miracle we have now. We have the white people who are out protesting with us, but you have other nationalities, minorities. They're not standing with us, but they benefited. They're benefiting from us voting Democrat, but they're not benefiting. They're winning in business and all these things, and we're not winning, and they're just reaping the benefits, and they're not supporting us.
And also, because of the kind of privilege they came into, I think a lot of them consider themselves white, so you feel like I need to tell them, break it to them saying that. You might think that you are white, you're not.
I do want to add on to the point, yes, the immigration law was passed after Martin Luther King, we got the Emancipation Proclamation. Churchill signed the order. Because of that, I'm here because I'm a specialized category that I bring a skill set to America that was not there before. It's not that it could not be cultivated here given the right resources. I was brought from a different country with the red carpet rolled in that you can have a job here. So that's why immigration law, we owe that debt to Dr. Martin Luther King because he made that possible, that in order to rebuild America, after Civil War, you need people from different countries involved to come together. But I instill that in my kids, even though my kids are American, they're born here, but I don't let them forget their Asian roots and what mom left behind to come here without realizing what I was leaving behind. I thought my education would just come in here, I'll be a PhD, I'm done. No, I had to restart. I had to restart my career from the ground up. But it's important, like as you said, for families to teach their kids the right thing because you are the biggest influence on your kids. If you don't raise the generation right, change is not going to happen.
To your point, on that, what happened, you're right. I feel like the problem is right is subjective. In certain communities, right is wrong. And they teach their kids wrong, thinking they're teaching them to be right. So, and that is a huge problem. I have actually thought how do you address that? If daddy's telling me this, if mama's telling me this, if Uncle Joe's telling me this, how do you intervene in the family conversation that is creating, and passing a law, Jim Crow? How do you do it? Without entering into, a theoretical police state. How do you maintain civil liberties, freedom of speech in America, and yet combat that speech which is corrupting so much of our population?
Well, I think that with the new generation of kids that are coming up, and the way that technology is, they have an option to choose whether they're going to go with what their parents say or what they see is really what's real. I mean, you can put up a facade all day long and you can make it seem like this is right, but when you get out into the world and you try to attempt it and somebody comes back at you, because we don't live in a world where we say, oh, that's not how we're supposed to do that. No, you're gonna get it. Like point blank period. You may not have gone through that situation, but in these times now, you get checked real quick. Like we, as my generation, we don't allow that to just be okay. And I know with the generation that's coming up now, they definitely don't allow that to be okay. So their parents may be I saw a video of a white female, a young girl. She was recording a conversation with her mom and dad, and she was talking about the stuff that was going on. And her parents were all about, well, why is this Black Lives Matter this, and why are we all? And she was like, are you serious, mom and dad? Like, do you really hear what you're saying right now? You can be ignorant to this, but I'm sorry, I can't. We live in a new world. We live in a different type of generation. And we're at a point where we're just not going to allow what you think is okay to be okay. Because you got kids now that will go to jail for their family. They will kill you for their family so that you understand that that ain't how it's going to be, and that's not what we're going to accept. And for me, I'm not going to accept it. I was just telling my brother and my mom today, I was riding down the street, and for the first time, I felt fear in my heart from a white person. Because I was riding with my music up, listening to my Kendrick Lamar, saying, we gonna be all right, yes we are. And this white man popped his head out of his window and put his arm out. I said, oh Jesus, what's about to happen? And you know what this man did? He put his head out, put out his hand, and waved at me. I said, wow, that could have went a whole nother way. And I kid you not, I was shaking. I still was shaking driving down the road out of fear that my life, that he could have said something negative to me. He could have flicked me off. He could have called me the N-word. That's what I automatically started thinking. So now, never being afraid of white people, I am now, after seeing the things that are happening, I am now afraid to walk past a white person because I don't know what they're going to say to me. I don't know if they might try to hurt me because of the things that's going on in this world right now. And that bothers me because I've never had to experience hate from a white person. I've never, because white people have always given to me. They've always put money in my hand. Octavia, you are this. Octavia, thank you for this. But when that man stuck his head out that window, especially after seeing that video of that guy on that from FedEx, and this man just came up to him, for what? He was doing his job, and somebody just came up to him and just called him a name, for what? Now we walk around here, y'all walk around here afraid. Now we're scared because we don't know if today is going to be my last day on this earth. And that bothers me.
Our ancestors have been living that since the beginning of, that's our history.
And I never thought that I would have to experience that in this lifetime. I've been on this planet for 30 years. And I never thought that I would say what I just said, that I was afraid of a white man.
I just wanted to say, I'm a teacher, so I've been listening, and I'll probably cry too. So this is my brother and my niece, and Ashley here is a teacher also, and she's already tearing up. This has meant the world to me. We teach at South Miami High School. I teach a course. I've been very lucky to teach a class called Honors, Leadership, and Learning. And the book Just Mercy landed in my lap about 3 years ago. And it changed my life. And I have been somebody who has just driven myself crazy and those around me crazy about everything that I've learned for reading Just Mercy. Not just what's in the book, but educating myself about all the things inside the book that I need to now go, okay, what is this? What do I need to find out about? The Dixiecrats. I didn't know about those. And all those other things about, boys who were born in the year 2000. 1 in 15 is expected to go to prison, but 1 in 3 African American males is expected to go to prison who were born in the year 2000. I have been begging to try and get outside guest speakers to come to school. I tried to get a trip planned this past March, to go down to Alabama to visit the Equal Justice Initiative. I've been in touch with someone from the Equal Justice Initiative. We've had conversations, live conversations with my students, with Jonathan from the EJI. No multiple choice test will ever replace the conversations we're having in the classroom and the conversations I'm having with people outside who obviously are more educated than I am in certain respects. You talked earlier about church, what we can do for church and stay after, run these seminars for our kids. We need you in our schools. We need you coming to our schools. We need you coming back into our communities. The problem is we can't afford it. I looked into getting someone to come in and talk about, it's called Set the Expectation for Athletes. She's $5,000. We do not have $5,000. My PTSA doesn't have it. The foundation doesn't have it. We need people who are willing to come back into the school system to do these things for our kids. We talked about parents. I've had kids, text me or call me after they graduate and go, I got into a huge argument with my parents. And I go, oh my gosh, that was not what I wanted or intended. They say, no, Mrs. Mack, that's exactly what needed to happen. I needed to have those conversations with my parents because they are living in those bubbles. They don't know what's going on. But through a class that we have, that I'm fortunate that I have a principal who's been very supportive to be able to allow me to bring the truth and facts. That's the other piece too. This isn't information that I'm just pulling out of my brain out of nowhere. These are facts. It is factual evidence in 1972 that we had 300,000 people incarcerated in this country. We now have over 2.3 million people. These are facts. So when I think about Brian Stevenson, all that he's done, Harvard grad, he could have gone anywhere to make 6 figures. He specifically chose to go back to Alabama, to to help those who are wrongfully convicted and help those who are on death row. That's the information that I'm bringing to my students. So I want you to know that as educators here, we are doing everything in our power to do the right thing by all of our students. I don't care if you're black, white, Asian, green, purple, blue, I don't care what color your hair is, it's about humanity and doing what's best. And this is something that we were fortunate that our parents who immigrated to this country taught us, to treat people with respect. And hopefully we're passing it on to our children too. So thank you for doing this.
Thank you.
Thank you all. I'm going to close this out, you all. This has been really great conversation. But I just want to ask everyone a question before we leave here. I would like to know how everyone, how will you continue to keep this movement alive in your space and in your community? Because we gotta keep this movement alive. We can't let it die. Like we spoke about it earlier, we gotta keep it alive. We gotta make the change. I'm sorry, Ashley, you want to?
No, I want to play off of what you just asked.
Okay.
So Mara and I worked with our former students because we couldn't utilize our current students for the project that we worked with Rhonda on. She was gracious enough to allow us to use our art to have a voice, to decorate that camper, the podcast studio. The goal of that, we had seminars with our kids because we wanted them to have that voice. It's not about what Mara and I came on to. We're just here's an opportunity, now what? And they all came together with the same message of this is how we want to share opportunities like this, to have those important conversations, because it's not, you have to have a starting place. So I get tired of we talked about it. It's about doing something, just like what Mara is saying, we could read that book and then put it away on the shelf and then not talk about it, right? And then actually do things from that build the community, what you were talking about, going back in and it's not investing in programs, it's investing in people.
Right.
So in order for us to make a change and come together, if Rhonda's going to be out in the community with it, is to start those little conversations that people may not have had to begin with. And from a place of not fear or hate, it's a loving place of here's me, right? Because that's what we all said today, who am I? And then to have that, this is me, right? I can't understand what it's like to be discriminated on the color of my skin. I can't, right? I can try and understand it and come to a place of empathy and be I can use my privilege to help change that. And that's how, using art to have a voice or to create the conversation that can maybe change somebody else's perspective, right? But it's coming together like we are today in order to bridge that gap.
So much, Ashley. Thank you. And I just want you all just real quick, because we're closing out real quick, just to say, how will you continue this movement? How will you keep it alive and in your space and in your community? Just real quick, Tara.
Sure. I walked into today and I, had all of these personal experiences that I was I'm going to be able to talk about this and I'm going to be able to share these things with you guys. And, for me, after sitting here, I'm I just need to shut my damn mouth and I need to listen right now. And I think for me, and I think that a lot of other white people can also, speak to this, is for me personally, there's things that have happened to me that all of a sudden it just kind of everything clicked for me. I began to really, there's, so I dated a black man here in Charlotte, and he would, bring things up to me. One day he told me this story. He said, hey, I went to a Rotary meeting, and I went to this Rotary meeting, and I went to the brewery, and I was the only black man there, and I went up and I ordered a beer. And the beer was smaller than the white guys that was given next to me. And I just, in my mind the whole time, I'm come on, it's because the beer had less of a content, had more alcohol content in it, not because it was a different beer or they were giving you a smaller glass. But he said to me, I felt I thought that they were doing that because they thought maybe I couldn't afford it, or, they're just giving it to me because I'm the only black man in the room. And in that moment, I just was you are taking this out of context. And I was just so annoyed with him. And as those conversations and as more of those things started happening and he started talking to me a little bit more about these things, it was what made me really realize, this is a thing. And this is also something I've never had to experience. So then therefore, and Jeff, it may be the same for you with Kim, Kim coming into your life probably has opened up your eyes to a lot of things that if she hadn't, then maybe you would have never realized, And I think that's the important part for the white community is like, opening our eyes to listening and hearing these things, but then also, being comfortable to have these conversations and just freaking listen. So, this is my first panel I've ever been a part of, like, for something like this, and I want to do it again. And, and I'm here to listen, and let's grab a coffee. I want to talk. So, yeah.
When I wake up every day, I get on my knees and I say my prayers. That's what I do. And I say, Lord, help me make today better than yesterday, and help me be the best person I can be today. And that's what I pray for. I pray for that every day. To answer that question, I think the way I can do it is to do what I'm doing now, be the most authentic and true person I can to myself and to the people I encounter, to speak what my truth is. It may not be your truth, but be willing to listen to your truth and understand that we're coming from different lenses. Jeff and I have been together. We've been married for 30 years, a long time. So we've seen this racial thing change over the years, because back in the 80s, it was real bad. End of the 70s, 80s, it was real bad. And then we got to a place where we were, okay, this is good. Now we're back in a place where it's crazy again. So we've gone through these things like that. And I think just being open and having conversation, and we don't always agree, because sometimes he don't get what I'm saying, and sometimes I don't get what he's saying.
I don't listen sometimes.
And I don't listen. So we have to make sure that we keep that open. And as an author, I have to keep writing and telling the stories of the people. There's on our coffee table downstairs, there's a picture of my great-grandparents who were the end of slavery. And I look at that picture every day I come downstairs because it reminds me, do not forget. Do not forget how you got here. Don't think you've arrived. Don't think that you don't have to do work, because you do. So I'm going to keep telling the stories, and I'm going to get to the point, as your brother said, to be the authentic self of me, so I don't have to write what somebody else thinks I should write, but I write truth. And I tell our stories, because our stories are valuable, and they need to be told. So that's what I'll do, and I'll continue to pour into young people, as you suggested with family, to keep pouring as much as I can. Deaton, he's amazing. Deaton, get your master's. Deaton, get your doctorate. Giving him that push for education and how powerful it is, because that's the knowledge we need, because that's the great equalizer. Because if I'm as smart as you, then guess what? I can get the economics, because I know how to do it now, because I figured it out. But if my back is broken and I'm always bent down trying to support you but not support what I'm trying to do, then I can't get there. So we have to unearth the truth and get to where we need to be, but understanding that we have got to do it together, because until we all get there, none of us have arrived.
First of all, I want to thank you for having us. This has been an absolute pleasure, and it's been fun, even though the subject matter is not fun, but it's still been a most enjoyable experience. But, some people say, well, what can I do? I'm just one person, right? Well, one voice can start a conversation. A conversation can bring consensus. Consensus can bring action, and action can bring reform. But you've got to stay at it. It's quantitative, and it's cumulative. Now, I have a picture of Dr. King in my office from 1963. I have a dream speech moment. It's a beautiful picture. I have one at home, same picture. People come in, if they ask me, why do you have a picture of Dr. King? I'm like, sit down. I'll be glad to tell you.
Good.
Yeah. So, always calling people out on their BS. A good friend of mine, just the other night, talking about, and I forget the gentleman's name, he was at the Wendy's and he had fallen asleep and he was shot. And my best friend of 25 years is like, well, what business did he do having been out that late at a Wendy's? And I'm like, are you serious? So I had to go off on his ass. And I had no problem doing it. My own sister, bless her little ignorant heart, driving down back in 2006, when we had first gotten we're the last major city in the South to get our first MLK Boulevard. And we were crossing over that intersection. I was like, oh, hey, check it out. It's like, we finally, have an MLK Boulevard. She's like, well, I don't know why.
He's like, Abraham Lincoln did way more for black people than Dr. King ever did. I don't even know why they even honor him. And I'm like, are you effing serious? I mean, I literally felt like slamming on the brakes and pushing her out. But and this is my sister, you know. Assuming we didn't get switched up at the hospital.
Keep talking to her.
Well, exactly. And my whole point is, don't accept this stuff. When people talk this junk, you need to turn it around on them with facts, you know, and combat ignorance with knowledge. So that's what I will continue to do. I, too, am authoring a book. I have not been published like you, but I hope to soon. But there's going to be plenty of meat in there about it. So I will do my part.
Wonderful, wonderful panel. But for me, I'm less about words, more about action. So I've committed to lifelong learning. I have so much to learn. But to your point, I volunteered at school. I pushed myself through the education board of Marvin Ridge because I was like, no, you're not teaching my kid that. I'm available anytime you need me to come in and speak. The other thing that I've done, it's simple, but it's something that all of us can do. We all believe in charity. We all give our money out to some organization. I'm very much into babies, and I loved St. Jude, and I have devoted, like I've given for past 24 years or something, I've given to St. Jude, and after George Floyd, it has stopped. I am not giving my money to an organization that gets funds from other organizations. I'm going to invest in the community. I'm going to take charge of mentoring.
Good for you. Good for you.
I'm kind of like you. I'm about that action. So I try to make to-do lists. So the first thing that I'm going to do is educate myself and continue to educate others. Second thing I'm going to do is any opportunity to speak. I love to speak at your school or anything like that. Please let me know. Or if there's anyone that's in my network, I would be happily reach out to them so they can speak on that front as well. I'll also tell you for local organizations, there's YBLL, LA, Young Black Leader Alliance, where they're an organization that prides themselves on education and getting young black individuals to college, and they have a very successful rate. Reach out to John Martin, he's a great brother, if you want to do that. And then also I have to piggyback on what Brandon said. I think it's a great idea of having the church teach you more than just spiritual enlightenment, and I think that's something I'm definitely going to look in and see how I can get involved and give back in that way.
That's right.
Keep being black. I'm gonna keep being black. I ain't got no choice. I'm gonna keep doing what I know is right within my my artist field. I'm gonna make sure that the jobs that I continue to take, that we have a diverse film crew, that the writers are diverse, that we're bringing in actors who actually know these stories, who are from these stories. I'm going to continue to raise questions in those meetings of production offices. I'm going to make sure that I'm in those meetings. I'm going to continue to invest. I'm going to link with brothers and sisters who are like-minded as me and find how I can bring them into my platform and give them a voice to speak out. Because within my community, in the artist community, we only learn from our own mistakes. We only learn from the yeses and the nos. But to have someone who can be there, to have a platform where others can speak and to educate them, I'm going to dedicate and have been dedicating my time to doing that and to learning more about my history. But at the end of the day, as a great man once say, I'm gonna be blackity black, 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 black.
There you go.
It's very hard to follow that.
Just say it loud.
But so, there are two sides to creating a better world for all of us. So one is, if we have to dismantle the existing systems, then at the same time we should also create better ones to replace that. And it's all of us. It's up to all of us to do that. So it's great to see that we feel like we are reaching a tipping point now, because this is the largest ever protest in the history of the country, I believe. it's also great to see people from other parts of the world coming out to support what's happening here. So even places like Iran and Palestine, it's so wonderful. So I feel like we are at a very disturbing and same time very exciting point in history. So I think it's a huge privilege to be living here right now. And I feel like we have a huge role to play. So my background, as some of you know, is I'm an architect, urban designer, so I help design public spaces, plus also we put on an art festival called Boom Charlotte, which is one of the largest art festivals in town. It's majority black artists. So I feel like my role is also to help create that better system, which is by design inclusive, by design better, so that while we're all fighting to tear down something which is deeply problematic, we also simultaneously building something which is something better to replace that. So not to plug a program or something, but we have actually a call out for a big online event, similar to Boom Charlotte. We're asking artists to respond to what's happening right now. So boomcharlotte.org. I hope to hear from.
Sure. Awesome.
Wonderful.
Yes,
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
Okay, great. I want to thank all of you. And I would like to say also that I am an up-and-coming author also. Dr. Kim Johnson, I'm almost finished with my book. She's been pushing me. So I would like to thank all of you. You have all been just wonderful. This experience has just been great. So I want to thank all of you and continue to let your voices be heard. And that's the only way, and to just keep working, talking to your families. You start there, talking to your families, talking to your friends, and it gets out into the communities. Just don't stop talking about, what's right, just being human, treating everyone as human beings, and that's just all we're asking for. So again, I thank you all. Thank everyone for coming out. Thank you so much. Thanks.
We do have, we want to end on another note here with our featured poet.
Yes.
Hayden Page.
Hello, everyone. We've been together for some time now, so I won't hold it up any longer. But first, again, thank you all for everything that you are doing, Rhonda and Janet, to host these events, to bring us together for conversation and community. As Dr. Johnson mentioned earlier, she's my mentor as well. She's good stuff, right? Yeah. Good stuff. Thank you. So with that, like you said, I have a book called Your Black Boy. Essentially with my book, it's essentially to highlight or bring recognition to the stories of black people, right? And I specifically honing on black boys, and it's something that we don't do enough within our own community. We don't talk about what we deal with, we don't talk about what we go through and what we feel. So beyond it being about just black boys, I think this moment highlights or shows, emphasizes the importance of just having a conversation, right? As we talk about different stories, different backgrounds, all those different stories are important and that story matter, but it's about where do we go from learning from that story, right? So after I know about your oppression, right? After I know of your pain, where do we go from there? And those are the conversations we have to have, that action piece. I like to be about it. I love the way you said that as well. Where do you go from here? Because each of us have a place in this fight, really. So again, that's the book here. I can definitely stick around and talk about the book. But I wanted to kind of bring in a poem, one of my favorite pieces. For those who ever say Antoine Fisher, Who Will Cry for the Little Boy. It's one of my favorite poems. I wanted to share that with you all this evening. So who will cry for the little boy, lost and all alone? Who will cry for the little boy, abandoned without his own? Who will cry for the little boy who cried himself to sleep? Who will cry for the little boy who never had the keys? Who will cry for the little boy who crossed the burning sands? Who will cry for the little boy inside of the man? Who will cry for the little boy, a good boy he tried to be? Who will cry for the little boy who cries inside of me? Right? So in closing, not to hold up, but I need you to understand and recognize beyond the work, people are in pain. Right? Your black brothers and sisters that you care enough about to show for tonight, we're still hurting. and that deserves some attention, peace, understanding.
Fireworks. Not gonna say
fireworks. As well. So when we talk about who will cry for the little boy, who will cry for me, who will cry for that little boy, who will cry for that little girl, that white boy, that black boy, that green girl, that blue, whatever. We all have a piece in that fight to show up for one another. So our job tonight, more than your individual task, is to show up for someone, including yourself. We all need safety. So thank y'all.